Well, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's the June 6th City Council study session. It doesn't look like we have anyone in the virtual attendance, so we'll go ahead and do a roll call. I'll start. I'm Melissa Youssef, Mayor. Around either way.
Dave Woodruff, Counselor.
Jessica Buell, City Councilor.
Go ahead, staff.
Well, you were so quick. How's that go?
Erin Hyder, Assistant City Manager.
Jose Madrigal, City Manager.
Mark Morgan, City Attorney.
Okay, great. Thank you. With that, we're going to start with a future new business and review of agendas. Counselors, do you have any future new business? No. Okay, I have one. I would like to see if there is council support to have staff look at options for how council might react to bills and legislation faster for issues that impact us. We have set a policy in the past that requires us to have a city council meeting and a vote in a meeting, which has kind of held us up recently when we wanted to potentially be able to maybe take city council action faster. And so I just wanted to see if there's council support to have staff maybe bring back some recommendations on what it possibly might look like if we did this differently. And I don't know, Jose, if you want to add anything to that process.
Just would say that we do have a pretty expansive process, and taking a look at it could provide different options that wouldn't have to go through such a long process, especially when there's times in which testimony is needed rather quickly.
If ordinance passed by the last council about taking positions on legislation.
Yeah, it was more restrictive than it had been in the past, in which case we have to have the meeting in public, right? And we have to vote on it. And so that's what I'm kind of actually bringing up again, to see if staff might want to bring us back, and yourself included, some recommendations on how we might be able to move the dial faster if we wanted to on issues that impacted council and the city of Durango in particular. I heard. Yeah. For the record, I want to notice that Gilda Yazzie has joined us. Thank you.
Okay. And I'm going to be proposing to you guys some new procedures for getting things done more quickly. So I'll work with Jose on making some recommendations for you.
That would be great. Do we have council support for that?
I do, and maybe just a point of clarification. Did we restrict or lighten up anything during the pandemic to hold a position on anything for like pandemic related advocation for anything on the state or federal level? This, I think, went in, it was after the pandemic, I think. Well, I mean, the pandemic was going on, but it was after that. It was
When I just got onto council, and it had nothing
Yeah.
really to do with the pandemic. It was more just about council position. But I support looking at not just this, but yeah, whatever other recommendations you have for the whole.
I think
Just so generally, it's a tool that I don't think you've used in the past this way, but you have the authority to call a special meeting with 24 hours notice to consider anything that you need to by resolution or ordinance. But we may need to amend the ordinance that was passed by the last elected group to get back to that point.
Yeah, there's a resolution, and I think there's some ways that I've used before that I think can kind of help with the council on that we can explain some different avenues.
And also, sorry, just to
Oh,
clarify,
yeah.
this would be if we had 3 members of council, say they're in favor of something, we would officially take a position on a state or federal bill, correct?
Yeah, well, I think we'll get into the details later. So this discussion is just, do we want staff to maybe bring us back recommendations such that we can analyze other ways so we can respond faster if we want to. And then we'll get into the details in that discussion. But I think when we kind of first passed this bill, honestly, I don't think we were aware of the implications of what we were doing at the time. And it has recently affected us. So I just wanted to bring that back. So it appears that we have council support for that. Any other new business, Gilda? Council Yazzie, do you have any? Yes, if there's council support.
I would like to revisit what I was looking at the amount of hours and the wage we're getting here, and I think that we need to revise that. So if we're doing the budget projections for next year, I think we should add that in there for discussion.
Are you talking about city council wages?
Yes.
Okay.
What came up? Because we had a whole discussion about that. What was the determination?
So I do believe the determination was we went through it. It was no action to move forward, but I do think that with this, if the council votes on it, then this council wouldn't be able to receive the pay raise until the next council. So it couldn't be a budget item because you wouldn't be eligible until the next council election, correct?
You have to phase it in. The basic rule is you can't vote yourself a raise. So you can vote it for the people who would replace you, but it would be phased in just like the elections are phased in cycles of 2 councilors and 3 councilors.
We had some discussions previously about why the wage is what it is and, us being, it's not called a weak mayor, but whatever the term is.
City manager form of government.
City manager form of government. And so maybe Gilda, during your next one-on-one with Jose, you can revisit some of the reasonings and then we can talk about it. Cause it wouldn't be for our council, but I don't support, cause we just had this discussion like three months ago or something. So I don't support that at the moment.
You know, we did just go through this and you might not have.
Okay,
been
so
aware
I'll
of that.
revisit it with Jose.
That sounds.
We had
great.
a
Okay.
presentation that goes through, but I think the big one was just with the budget process coming up this year, it wouldn't affect it because we couldn't have it fully affected until the new council comes in. A new council would be the only ones that would be able to receive it, not this council.
Okay, but we still have to do it. Because when I was doing some figures on it, they went ahead and they authorized the minimum wage in Colorado to be $13.75. And did you guys do all that discussion? Okay, okay.
We'll get you the
Okay.
presentation and discussion.
Okay, no other new business? Okay, do we want to take a look at the June 20th agenda and see if we have any comments for that? Looks like we'll have a Durango Mesa Park semi-annual update. And a retreat follow-up for stormwater funding and transportation. It looks like a short one. With an adjournment at 4:05. I guess the only thing I would bring up there, if that's truly what we believe will be the case and no add-ons, Jose, I guess I just wonder if we could start later.
I believe for that week, I won't be at the next council meeting. I was just thinking in regards to the inflation discussion that you had just asked for an item on. That might be.
Then let's push that. I mean, it's not emergent. We can wait until July for that discussion when you're back in town. If you want, that's
Sure,
fine with me.
that's fine. If the council would like to start later, we could do that.
It looks like we have about an hour.
I have a question, okay, I don't know if I can just talk because it's just a study session, right? About the schedule. Okay. If we're finding that, because it seems like our agendas are getting a little bit shorter and we're adjourning earlier, could we look at 1 study session a month instead of 2 with our council meetings, if that would be appropriate?
I think that there probably are a lot of issues we can talk about to run the government more efficiently. Just because we don't have long agenda items and we get through them quickly also could mean that the counselors are in support of whatever comes up.
Before, go ahead. Before
But-
we were on council, there wasn't study sessions every 2 weeks. It wasn't like this. So I was just kind of advocating going back to more of an more efficient run government rather than study sessions every single meeting like we have been doing.
And the only other issue I would just say is that we can't just chat about any item that we want to because we have an extra hour. It has to be agendaized and noticed so the community we're talking about it. So we would need to add something if we wanted to make another hour onto this agenda.
Well, we could put it up for discussion and maybe not vote. Can you hear me? Okay. Only because we have that, the rule where we can't talk with two or more counselors, because otherwise it would be a public meeting. So that's why, go ahead. No.
It's a little more complicated than that. It's actually simpler than that. What you cannot do is you cannot discuss things that you're preparing to take action on outside of the public purview. There are a lot of things that you can do. And it seems like some of those things aren't being done out of fear of violating the sunshine laws. And that's something that it's kind of one of my projects to educate you guys a little bit better on how you can and can't communicate while still staying within the purview of the open meeting laws. And then just to add to your other comment about the study sessions, the only thing that the charter requires you guys to do is have 2 regular meetings a month. Everything else that you choose to do is at your option, and you can change it however you choose to. So again, the only thing you're obligated to do by the charter is have 2 regular meetings a month, one on the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday of the month.
I would advocate that maybe if we just take a look at the study sessions and what's lined out and what staff needs from us, because that's what the study sessions are for, is, discussion on topics where staff potentially needs, some idea of what council's thinking. And that if 2 are not needed, I would advocate for 1 study session a month, if that works.
And then just going back to what I was saying about the open meeting laws, just receiving information doesn't require a public meeting to do. And received in different formats, either 2 at a time or through email. So there's some rules I want to get you a memo on that will kind of help us streamline everything like you mentioned earlier.
All righty, that sounds excellent. Okay, my only other concern would be, how are we going to be able to get the reports from the department, since we can't call them directly and ask?
Which reports are those?
Like, say like housing, if they're going to make a report
Oh, so
during the study session. So how are we going to get that information?
gotcha. So just a little bit of a background. From a staff perspective, it's council decision. I mean, I think each council is different in how much information they want and how many meetings they want. If there was the direction to keep it at 2 study sessions a month, we would fill a calendar. If the direction was to make it 1 study session a month, we would fill a calendar. So I really do believe, like on this one, it really is the council's pleasure. You state out how many study sessions you want, and we'll be able to make it work either way. So that may be an item you just want to discuss on how many study sessions is the schedule for the council is what you would be desirable.
All righty, but my question that I need to have an answer to is, how would we get information from the different departments when they're going to make a report, or say they're thinking about ideas that they want to present to the council,
So
if
that's-
we're not allowed to call them and ask them?
So that information will either flow to you as part of Jose's job as a city manager. His job is to manage the city and provide you with information as you need it. And then any information that you want, you just request directly to Jose.
Absolutely. I mean, from a perspective of myself, in the way the calendars are done, we find items to present to council to try and choose my words wisely, but it's not to take up the time, but to place in there. So that's why the items are where they're at, but there wouldn't be anything in regards to, if the council said we only want 1 study session a month, I don't think there'd be anything that you would be missing out on. We would just make sure that that's what the 1 session a month is. I will say that there are times where we're just filling the agenda because we have time to fill, and who has a presentation? Okay, we'll put it on here for 30 minutes. So I think it really just depends on what's the expectation of the council in regards to time. From a staffing standpoint, in regards to reporting and ideas, they'll still go through the study session. It'll just be, we'll just schedule them in where they go through.
And we get those updates during regular city council meetings too, under operational updates. So it's not just study sessions where we're getting those.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that. So for example, quarterly, we get a housing update. And we always hear from our airport director on a regular basis, and we hear from Parks and Rec. And so if there's others that you're interested, definitely be in touch. But we do get those, in our regular city council meetings. So they're part of the record, and the public can hear them as well.
Okay, so I'm satisfied with those answers, because I just want to make sure I don't miss out on any information.
I'll make sure I mean, anytime that there's something specific, if the council decided we only wanted 1 study session, but there was something that needed to come to you, we could definitely call a special meeting if we felt that it was in that portion of it if necessary. But from a staffing standpoint, you give us the how many study sessions you want, and we'll fill the calendar into where we need to be to
Great.
make sure that you're properly informed.
Counselor Woodruff, do you have any thoughts? Are you sure? Just a little more time, maybe.
Are we asking to give direction right now of whether we want one study
Yeah,
session? or-
not necessarily. What I brought up for consideration
Right.
is we have an hour and a half
Right.
here between meetings, which is not the best use of time. So I was just suggesting we start an hour later for this and maybe, so if we start at 3:15, then we'll be able to conduct this business. And I think maybe I don't know, I don't need to make that decision right now unless council wants to. As far as minimizing our study session calendar, unless counselor wants to entertain that idea.
Well, since, we're going into the summer months, things are probably going to slow down a little bit, and then they'll pick back up when school starts. So I would be open to the fact that if you think that we need to start an hour later, talk with Jose and coordinate it and just send us an email, let us know. I'd be fine with that.
That's a good idea. Okay, so for this meeting, then it sounds like we have support to start at 3:15.
Would we like an item on well, I guess it would be a council meeting, or, I mean, you could give direction, whichever one, but do we want an item to discuss how many study sessions regularly? Is that something that's supported?
Sure, and if we do have that item to discuss that, what I would like to see is kind of, I guess, our past history of what we discussed in those items, you know what I mean, or just a little bit of our future agenda, at least.
I think we could give you the calendar.
Yeah.
A sample calendar of what a year looks like with the one study session for the council to present to, for y'all to ask some more questions on it.
Okay,
I will tell you, again, from a staffing standpoint, if you tell us 2 study sessions, we'll fill it. If you tell us 1, we'll fill it. In either way, I do not think there will not be anything critical that's missed.
great. Okay, yeah, let's have that discussion. I would support it. Everybody else?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So the next study session is to discuss study sessions.
Next study session, we'll wait for Jose to discuss that. So that'll be in July, but next study session will start at 3:15.
And just, I haven't heard it said this way, but you may want to consider at that meeting, letting it flow the opposite way. I mean, he's your city manager. He has all of the high paid, but reasonably paid employees working for him. He's the one who's actually generating the information that you need to study. So you may want to defer to the administration to make recommendations to you about when study sessions are necessary. You don't have any basis to decide how much you need. That information flows from the administrative side. And there's certainly plenty of jurisdictions that do it that way. They suggest, council, we need a study session, a 2-hour study session, a 4-hour study session for these items that are going to work their way up to you voting on them. As opposed to you guys saying you want a study session, not really knowing what
Just for
direction.
having it, right?
Right.
I would
Just to
completely
consider
agree.
for next time.
So I think as part of that analysis, it would be helpful to have your perspective, on what you need and what would be helpful for staff. Okay, great. So I think we can move on then to information only items. Community survey launch with Tom.
That's me. Good afternoon, councilors. Tom Sluice, Public Information Officer for the city. So we're actually very excited to get this launched, the public community survey. We have never done this really in the city before. We've had some kind of hodgepodge approaches, but this will be our first, really statistically kind of valid survey to kind of establish some benchmarks that we can use moving forward for a variety of topics. It's a real high level view essentially of the quality of life within Durango, as well as the services provided by the government. And I just have one slide I do want to show you really quick that I'm just really excited about. If I can get to it. It's covered up. There we go. So our partner Polko has already generated 3,000 households within Durango. What you're looking at in the shaded blue area or shaded purple area is essentially every household that's going to receive a questionnaire in terms of how things are going. So what their expectation is we're going to have about a 15 to 20% response rate out of these 3,000 households, and it's going to cover a variety of topics. Again, really high level overall views of how are things going economically, how are things going, financially, otherwise within your life, how are city services satisfying you in general terms. And then we're probably going to get 400 to 500 responses. And then we're going to have Polco come back early September to kind of break it down for us. And so it's a very detailed analyzed report. So those 3,000 households will be getting surveys of both Spanish and English. Of course, in addition to Google, we can have any language that they want also. So we'll have dedicated Spanish, dedicated, of course, English. And then we're going to promote it heavily, of course, on social media. We're going to do news releases. We're going to have, in addition to these dedicated surveys, we're going to have a URL. So basically anybody can participate to try and get the word out. And what they've done is switch their methodology. They used to do just households. That was it. And now they're kind of opening up the doors because that's the latest trend for benchmarks like this. And then they're going to compile it all together and then give us the final result in early September.
If I can touch just a couple of things on it, a community survey and the importance of it really goes to the voice of the customer. When we look at community engagement, it's a great way to see where we are. Obviously, it's a point in time. So there are definite things that go into it in regards to how people are answering. I mean, if you look at now when interest rates are really high compared to where they were before, definitely can have sway in it. But when we look at making decisions, when you look at setting policies, setting goals, it's a good benchmark to take a look back and see where the community feels that we're doing really well on and maybe some areas that we can improve and be able to adjust our strategy as well as for staff to address our operations of things that maybe we're just missing because we just don't know. So it really is that other key component of community engagement. Very similar to what we do with our city employee survey. It would be something that we would do every 2 years. Every year is too quick and you don't have enough time to make changes and see what's going through. Polco does thousands of cities within the country. So we'll actually get to benchmark ourselves with other cities from maybe we look at nationally, maybe we look at regionally, maybe we look at just in the state, but being able to see kind of how we're competing against other cities or how our residents are feeling compared to others, I think definitely gives a benchmark and a background for us as we look at making some of those decisions. And so I'm really excited about getting this going through, really getting an ability just to kind of see where we're at and be able to really engage the community in our services.
That's
Any
basically
questions
it.
from council?
Sounds excellent.
You answered most all of mine. I was curious, how long will it take to complete the survey for these residents?
They're looking at 4 to 6 weeks and they're looking to have initial results by the end of August.
But
Oh,
how
you
lo-
mean the actual field
yeah,
trial?
how long
No,
will it
it's-
take
it's
them?
4.5, 5 pages, probably, I'm guessing.
Ooh.
I think it's pretty dense, 7 to 15 minutes.
How, 7 to 15
7 to
minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. And how are you going to send it out? It's all electronic?
It's both. So the initial surveys are going to be postcards saying heads up, a actual survey questionnaire is on its way in the mail.
Great.
Or they can go to a dedicated link just for them. Or you can wait until, the general URL is out. So there's 2 main ways. It's going to be direct mailings randomized to those households and then the URLs for the website.
Okay. And then if we don't get enough responses, what is it Polco? What-
Polco, yeah.
Will do we send it out again? What do we do?
I think from my conversations with Polco, that's why they've been expanding it into the web, because I think traditionally, of course, that was the only way you would get the responses is you would go through voter record rolls, send out the response rates and you could get maybe 3 to 5%. But I think with their targeted methodology and trying to get their demographics to match, with the people, that's going to help get the response rate too. But it's really, I think, their expansion into the website area that's going to allow them to get that. We haven't actually talked about what happens if you don't get that response rate because it just hasn't seemed to be something that's ever happened with them.
It
based on-
hasn't? Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's just a long survey.
Yeah.
So people need a little time.
Yeah, it's going to be sent out on Durango, City of Durango letterhead though. So it's going to be.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and it's going to have Jose's signature on it too. So we're going to
Nice.
have some. It's going to be hard.
Maybe his picture in the corner.
Yeah. I think it's going to be hard to mistake it for junk mail.
Okay, great. I think that's excellent. Okay, one more question. How did all those 3,000 dots get selected?
They did their own, I don't know the exact details. It
Okay.
is a randomized sample of the households. And then what they're going to do is get the responses and cross match them against voter registration rolls to help get the benchmarks in terms of age and gender and any other identifying characteristics, because that's going to be key for the results is to make
So
sure.
they'll make sure they get a variety.
Well, it's going to match the
They'll hit-
demographics of the city. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so that's the responses. They want to make sure that the responses are not unnecessarily swayed one way or another in terms of men, women, different racial makeups, et cetera. So it's going to be based on
And or age groups,
age groups too, would part of it also.
I would think. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, interesting.
Are you hoping to get one response back per household or are you hoping to get multiple back per household? One, so
Yeah.
even if 10 people live in that house, you're hoping to get one response.
Yeah, and that might be tricky if they're rentals because it's going to be owner of record at that household. So we'll have to see, and they're going to have to match that up too in terms of who sends it back, what's the name on it versus is it the owner too?
Is there a question there of like if they own the house or if they're a renter or
I don't remember seeing if I'd have to get back to you on that.
might be good just, I mean, it's probably too late in the game now, but it might be good to know that information to
Sure.
figure out, for some
No,
quality.
one of the questions at the end in terms of just how much, they have the generic, how much money do you make? How long have you been in Durango? And one of them is, do you own a house or rent too?
So we've never done this before?
I don't know. Since I've been here, I haven't seen one that's like this. It is a pretty in-depth survey. So when we look at the 7 to 15 minutes, I know that does sound like a lot of time, but it really is a measurement of all of the services we provide. So it really does give us a bit more of then, does the city do a good job? Yes or no? Well, it doesn't go that far. It really talks about our, our quality of life, our economic vitality. When we look at our public safety, when we look at our infrastructure, there's just a whole lot of different ways so that we can see maybe we're doing really good in one area and there may be some other areas that we're not. And so it kind of helps put that instead of that just broad general question of, are we doing a good job or not? We really want to get the feedback specifically as to what may be the trends and areas that we may have some shortfalls.
It seems like it's going to be very helpful. I'm very glad we're doing it. Okay, I'm wondering, Jose, did the entire executive leadership team have an opportunity to review the questions to make sure we're oh, good.
We did. We really, there's a couple things there that we might have changed, but we try to keep it the same specifically because that's how we benchmark against other cities. So changing and specializing to other things kind of helps, may do something. And then also these aren't what you would call no implicit bias in the questions. And so we want to make sure that any questions we ask don't have that implicit bias to it. But if you take a look at some of those portions of it as a whole, the overall economic health of Durango, is it a great place to raise children? How does it rate? The quality of natural environment, the infrastructure. So there's just a lot of different questions that go in there that measures things that we do have a part of, and then maybe some things that we really may not have a part of, but we do have an ability to affect. So it is a good way of just making sure that we get a really good notice of what is it that is behind, whether you look at the economic vitality or the public safety or infrastructure, where are we at? And so I'm pretty excited to see it. I've seen it in other communities of where you're able to benchmark and then just see growth that we're able to do, or areas that we can strategically target, or some things that maybe we never even knew about because we never really ask. And when you look at our infrastructure, how many surveys do we send about our water and sewer system? So it'd be good to have that feedback.
Last one I have, sorry.
No,
Will
go.
we be able to parse out these data to reflect how certain demographics answered specific questions to be able to look at, okay, awesome. That'd be really good to see if there is dichotomy within certain demographics of how they
The only
answer
thing we don't
something.
have is typically in a larger municipality, major metropolitan area, you would have precincts, but we are just one little area. Yeah,
We do have precincts, just one.
right.
Excellent. Any other council comments or questions? Okay, great. Thank you so much for that update. Really appreciate it. We'll look forward to that in September. Okay, direction needed items. We're looking at DEI land acknowledgement, DEI cross-functional team. And who are we on for that? DEI team.
Mayor and council, we have our DEI cross-functional team. Several members are here today, and Spencer Snare is going to be joining me up here, and she's going to be giving a presentation on behalf of the CFT. Just a quick introduction. Come on up, Spencer. Back in April of this year, a couple months ago, the DEI CF team did provide an operational update of an overview of the key initiatives that the team was identifying of focusing on in 2023. And at that point in time, they did share that one of the items they'd be bringing back to council for further direction is a discussion around the land acknowledgement. And so with that, that's the intention, that we have a brief presentation seeking direction at the end on how to best move forward based on the team's recommendation. So I'll turn it over to Spencer.
Thank you, Erin. I am Spencer Snar. I am a librarian at Durango Public Library. And as Erin mentioned, I am also a member of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion cross-function team. With me also on the team today, we have Mark Williams from Community Development, Kyle Delamora from the City Manager's Office, and Guthrie Hardesty from Parks and Recreation. As Erin said, we did present a few months ago. We laid out our roadmap, where we're going with our DEI goals and recommendations, all of which our partners at CPSHR helped us shape. And my colleagues talked in that meeting about how DEI is smart business, how high-performing organizations are inclusive organizations. So today, as it was stated, I'm here to talk more about the Indigenous land acknowledgement. I plan to further discuss why this is important and to create and implement one, different ways that they can be used, and then ultimately to seek your direction from about our processes and next steps. So I don't know. Okay, so why introduce the practice of a land acknowledgement? This is a really important question. What it boils down to for us is that language is a really powerful tool that we can use to foster inclusion, and that land acknowledgements can be simple and formal ways of intentionally showing respect and sharing information. Our CFT views a land acknowledgement as a starting point. We believe it can lead to greater engagement, representation, and collaboration between the city and our Indigenous employees, neighbors, and communities. But let's dig a little bit deeper. We want to introduce a land acknowledgement because it will allow us to create a broader public awareness of Native history, Native sovereignty, and the history of the land in which we live, work, and recreate. It offers recognition recognition and respect to the original stewards of the land. It offers support and truth-telling and reconciliation efforts. And to move beyond a performative speech, our land acknowledgement will need to inspire others to take specific and informed actions to support Indigenous groups, our communities, and causes. Doing so can allow us to begin or continue to repair our relationships with these communities and with the land. So far, we have researched some local to national groups that have created and are interacting with land acknowledgements. You can see the list here. While the CFT finds it important that we be on par with these other organizations, we also want to note that the city identifies inclusivity as a strategic goal, and this is one way that we can work towards and value that goal collectively. Our CFT recognizes that DEI is a continuous process. It's not a checklist. It's not a result. We believe that by engaging in a land acknowledgement, the city will foster stronger partnerships and engagement with community groups and enhance Durango's sense of place in ways that celebrate the community's character and cultural heritage. Through a land acknowledgement, we can formally recognize the histories and experiences of the original caretakers of the land while celebrating and uplifting these same Indigenous caretakers and communities that are still here. So, while researching, we also looked at how other groups are using land acknowledgements. There's so many ways. But how will we use a land acknowledgement? Our CFT has envisioned several nuanced applications for the use of a land acknowledgement, ranging from passive notifications on the city's website maybe correspondence, promotional materials, to a more active approach, such as announcements before council meetings or departmental public meetings or open houses, and signage on city buildings and trailheads. Despite the visions that we have as a CFT, we collectively agree that the community should have a large say on what and when and where makes a land acknowledgement most meaningful. So, as I mentioned before, our work to establish a land acknowledgement aligns with the strategic plans. It will enhance a sense of place. It will foster stronger community partnerships. Our vision for use has a lot of potential, and we're hoping to get feedback from you today, as well as feedback from the community. And to accomplish this, we will utilize the Connect and Engage platform. We will form working groups. We aim to seek expertise from Indigenous tribal members and from groups that currently engage in land acknowledgements or have experience in creating one. Ultimately, your direction guides this team. The CFT is seeking direction on A, our efforts to move forward with the drafting and community engagement processes, and also feedback on when to use an official land acknowledgement. If directed to move forward, we anticipate having a document ready for you to review and discuss later this fall. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. Council, any thoughts and or questions? Counselors?
I mean, I don't want to be inappropriate, but Gilda, I would love to hear kind of your thoughts on how we move forward best.
Oh, thank you, Dave. I'm glad you want to hear what I say.
I don't want to be inappropriate, but I wanted to give, I definitely.
Well, I think it's an excellent idea. You know, I don't know if you realize, I think it's the League of Women Voters do that. And their statement is very powerful. My only a real concern would be when you start labeling the different ethnicities of the tribal entities, you'd be very careful because there is, you know, like jealousies and all kinds of things involved with that. But, you know, I think this would be a really good step for the city because a lot of other organizations do it. And I think if we want to be more inclusive as we grow in our function as a, you know, administrators, this is a great idea. But yeah, if you need help, just, you know, send me an email through Jose and I'll go ahead and get back to you.
You mentioned earlier, you know, I feel like this is a really good starting point. What I really don't want this to be is a way to pat ourselves in the back and wash our hands of this. So I think it's really important that this is not just like something we check a box, like you said, but is a springboard into better, more inclusivity, to be more open with all of our community members. So as long as, I think from my standpoint, as long as we have that understanding that we're not just be like, oh, well, we did this, so we're good. That's what I really don't want to do.
Did you want to respond?
Absolutely. We understand that. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, all the work you guys have put into this so far. I love the focus on engagement, representation, and collaboration. I think it's super important. And I think if this provides another point of connection with some underrepresented communities, then I absolutely support it. I would definitely look for your recommendations as to where and when we implement them. You know, what trailhead signs would be the most impactful, for example, when as one of those. And, you know, and so, yeah, I think more research, obviously, but a starting point for something that could be great. Thank you.
A couple questions. So when you are doing your outreach with the community, can you let us know as a council in the event that we may want to participate in any of that and or listen? Is it, I mean, it seems like a really great opportunity for outreach in the community. And if, you know, if you're doing, I don't know how you're planning on doing that outreach, but
The group does intend to form a working group to work on
Oh,
this
okay.
in partnership with this team. So this is a great, another kind of illustration of how we can utilize and leverage working groups on different projects across the city, even with an internal team, with community working groups. So that's the intention right now, but I imagine that there's another kind of campaign or, outreach program that they would use in addition to that.
Okay, yeah, just to keep us informed in the event that there, I don't know if there's an open house or anything like that, that if there was, I would definitely be interested in attending just to hear what the community had to say, because sometimes if you can hear it firsthand too, it's helpful. So I was curious, you asked us what our thoughts on how it should be used, depending on how engaged the community truly is in this effort. If they're really engaged and we're ensuring that we are representing various different aspects of our community and demographics of our community, and we're really pulling that in and we're getting good representation, then I would personally be very interested in having some type of acknowledgement that the community helped us prepare before our council meetings. I think it would be excellent. And we've done it, as you know, Mayor Noseworthy did it. And it was helpful, but having it be community driven, I think is powerful. And so city council sponsored events, I would be very in favor of that, especially if it came from the community. I would also be interested in knowing how the city of Boulder and the city of Denver City Council use it. Because I think that they're good role models. Are there other communities kind of our size that do it? Does Fort Collins do it? Anything?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Happy to look more into
I was
that.
just curious about that. And then kind of along what Dave was saying, Councilor Woodruff is, we don't want this to be obviously the only initiative. I'm just curious if what other DEI efforts the cross-functional team might have in store.
Sure. So those were touched upon in that last meeting. But essentially,
Or just yet, if there are other, just generally, you don't have to go into too many details. I
Yeah,
was
the
just
team-
curious.
The team highlighted 3 focus areas for 2023. Number 1 was to start working on, in partnership with the community, the draft land acknowledgement. Number 2 was incorporating the city's cultural history into our onboarding process. So as we have ways to really educating new folks that join, like the history and the rich cultural history we have of Durango. And then finally was a comprehensive policy review to ensure that we are really reviewing those through a DEI lens. Now, there's another piece that's very internal, is incorporating a DEI related goal into the annual goal setting process. So those are the 4 very specific focus areas that the CFT is focusing on for 2023.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other thoughts, council? Great. So you will, with this, you'll be coming. So is there, first of all, I need to first see if there's council support to have them continue to support and pursue these efforts. On land acknowledgement?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so definitely have full council support for that. We appreciate your efforts on this. And then we should expect to hear back from you around when, do you think? Oh, did you say fall?
the fall.
Okay,
Yeah, anticipated in the fall.
that's great. Excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks to all the DEI team. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate the help. Okay, I guess we have a 10-minute break. Okay, let's just do it now while we can. And we can start early. Let's take a 10-minute break, start at 3:10. Unless we get super excited about the lodger's tax overage. All right, should we go ahead and reconvene our meeting and moving on to direction needed item on lodger's tax? Yeah. Yeah, let's take a really long time if we need to.
Nothing but time.
Okay, you're up again, Tom. Thanks for all of this.
For the city. And so basically, I do have to own up to a typo I introduced that said in the agenda documentation that there was 1.38 million allocated for sustainable tourism in 2022. It's actually 1.46 million. The amount, though, that we're dealing with today is exactly the same. It's still $361,000 and $361.84. So what I'm looking for today is some council direction on essentially what to do with this money. Either we can go with the recommendations that'll be presented to you, or we can hash it out you can hash it out at the next council meeting on the 20th. So here's the big picture. In 2022, $3.64 million of lodger's tax was collected in the city. And of that $3.64 million, it was broken up according to this pie chart. Unfortunately, it says preparing Instagram there. I don't know why. So behind that little screen, it says administrative costs, which are 2% of $67,000, which are taken off the top before we allocate anything. The next chunk is the Tabor overage of $253,742. That, of course, was up to voters in November of 2022, where combined, I think with 2021, we were looking at about $1 million that they said allocate according to 66% for housing, 20% for transportation, and 14% for the arts. So again, that was taken off the top for 2022. So we had the remainder, 11% under the ballot language for council determination, $364,000. Arts and culture was allocated 14% of $464,000. Transit got 20% for $663,000. And for today's discussion, the focus is on the marketing, which is at 55% of $1.82 million. So next slide is, of that $1.82 million, this is what we did for 2022. We had our Visit Durango contracts, there's two of them, for $1.18 million. Our destination management master plan, which costs $97,000. And then council has a policy for reserves of 10%. So we also withheld $182,376. When you add those up, that's where the $1.46 million comes into play. Subtract that for from the $1.82 million. And that gives you the balance that we're going to be talking about today of $361,084. So far, so good. Okay. Yeah. That is the 55% after Tabor, after the 2% admin fee. That's the contractual amount of 1.183 million. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, the contract was just our best guess in 2021 for 2022. Just the ballot language is 55% to sustainable marketing. No. Yes, and I'll get into that a little bit later. Yep, but that's a good question. Feel free, anybody else, it gets complicated, and this is why we can talk all afternoon about it. But yeah, it's complicated. So we're at, again, 361.84. So we got obviously some pretty basic options for the 361. Staff has got some requests. Visit Durango has got some requests too, and which I'll get into in a second. And then of course you could just go with a combination somewhere in between.
I'm sorry to ask so many questions
fine.
in advance and I'll let you get you through your presentation, but just to confirm, the 361 will go to marketing in some way, shape or form. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it'll be sustainable marketing.
Okay.
Ballot language also says, off the top of my head, I've got it written down here. I think it's conference center, also meetings too, but I'll show you in a second. Yeah. But basically just think of it in terms of sustainable tourism marketing for right now. So the guidelines to kind of help you is, of course, we've got the 2021 ballot language, which of the lodger's tax collections, 55% has to go for sustainable tourism marketing, including advertising and attracting conferences, conventions, and meetings. And that's really it. It's pretty broad. Before Dirk left, we ran this by him and he said, to help you make these decisions, just think and define your marketing as promotion of the city and the attraction of tourists and other visitors to the city. Again, it's pretty broad. And so the bottom line, and this was Dirk's language, is that you do have flexibility so long as the basic intent of the ballot language is honored. So, good to go? Okay. So we'll get into the request now. So we have our sustainability division has made a request. Transportation has, of course, in Visit Durango. Specifically, we've got, and they're here today also in the audience if you want to ask them any questions. But sustainability has got some EV chargers they want to install. I think it's $1 million project they want to install 4, and they are doing this to support the visitor and tourism economy. Transportation also has some signage projects that they're working on for redesign. There's an audit related to that, as well as the installation. Again, this is under the supporting the visitor and tourism economy. And Visit Durango has a request for some money to go to local events, trail and infrastructure enhancements, and a destination grant. So taking all that into account, sustainability requested $200,000 and staff is suggesting $133,000. Transportation is requesting $100,000 and the suggested amount that's covered by the closed captions is $100,000. And that's specifically because transportation doesn't have the flexibility for this particular project, and sustainability has a little bit of leeway. And so that's why the full funding amount is requested for transportation. And finally, Visit Durango has requested $245,500 and we are suggesting $128,000. And if you add up the 133, the 100 and the 128, that gets you right to $361,000. I did not divide the 84 by 3. Next steps. You got 2 options here really, which is, this is just a suggestion. You can say, great, go ahead and allocate the money, or we can bring it up at the next council meeting if you want to deliberate and go a different direction. Sure. Yeah. I think we're happy to
deliberate
answer
now.
any
We have
questions.
time.
Yeah. You guys want to?
Oh.
Oh, maybe not.
Okay.
Because there's no public here. You're there, they don't have this like first you have staff recommendations and it's considered having.
Okay. Mhm.
Or you can tell them to go back.
Right.
There's if I can just add some clarity. So direct staff to allocate as indicated does go back to a regular council meeting because it has a resolution to authorize the budget and expense amount. So if you were to say, we're good with these requests, the direction that we would follow would be to place it on probably be a consent item on your next regular meeting to approve the funding to be distributed as staff recommended. So there is an action item where it will come back to a regular meeting.
That's for sure the direction that I want to go, mostly because I don't know about like the projects and such. And then if you talk about sustainable, like I don't know, what can I say or not? Like I want to know how much of our EV chargers are being used right now and how many more do you need
So you can receive all the information you want.
now? I can ask questions.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay.
You can receive all of that. And then it's just there's that 2 options that we see: direct at staff to bring it, say, yep, we are good. We'll put it on a regular council meeting for you to approve formally. Or It could be, there may be some input questions, maybe a different direction that comes out, which means that we would then come back at a different meeting, whether it be another study session or at a regular council meeting to say, here's what we heard in different ways and something different to present. So with that, I'll ask the three parties to come up and be ready to answer any questions.
And we're in agreement. I misspoke. I mean, the fact that he says when you goes back to staff and it comes back for vote, that
Yeah.
means all the things I was saying.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Can I go for just a couple questions? Okay. So for the EV chargers, where would those chargers be? How many of our chargers are being used? Are we at like max capacity? Are there Teslas waiting in line at the transit center? What's going on? Marty, talk to us.
That was several questions, so I'll do my best on. So, in a nutshell, there are two very large grant opportunities for specifically EV fast chargers. So those are the really high powered ones. We have two of those right now that we were installed in 2021 as part of a previous round of a state funded program. So the window on the opportunity to take advantage of this grant funding, there's some state grant funding, and then there's also some federal grant funding. It seems to be that there's this one window, and there's not a lot of indication that there will be a future window. So it's a lot of grant funding that's available right now. And the project scope is approximately $1 million. It would be 4 additional fast chargers and some upgrades to our existing 2 fast chargers. So that would bring us up to 6 total fast chargers. The match requirements on these is approximately 20%. And so that's where the $200,000 is coming from. It's a approximately $1 million estimated project. The city's contribution would be about $200,000. The reduction for the 133 is because there is a little bit of fund balance in the sustainability division fund that can be directed towards that, but there's not the full amount that can be directed.
Love this idea. Love, how does it fit into marketing?
Yeah.
Like sustainable marketing.
Absolutely. There we go. So the Colorado EV plan and multiple, the EV, there's a program called EVCO, which is a promotion, state-run promotion program. Like, so many of them center around the fact that fast chargers serve essentially 2 populations. One is they serve as gas stations for residents that maybe can't do at-home charging. And then by far the top consideration is road trips and people traveling, because you fill up an EV when you're commuting differently. You can plug it in at home, you can plug it in at your place of work, but when you're out on the road and really doing, road tripping and tourism, you need that fast charging. And that is what we are seeing across the board of our existing fast chargers, is that it's a tourism related endeavor. In fact, one of the grant opportunities is specifically associated with electrifying our scenic byways as a tourism. This is led by, it's a grant application led by CDOT. And so it's drawing in EV drivers, in the increasing population of EV drivers that are tourism and coming in with that, EV road trippers.
Should I stick with Marty for a second?
Can we stick with Marty? for a
Yeah.
second?
Yeah.
Maybe we can all just ask some questions. Go ahead, Gilda.
Okay, so when you were talking about your granting options, so would that 133,000 be a matching grant component of that?
Yes. So the total project cost for the installation would be around $1 million. The grant requirements they're varied depending on the grant that we could potentially be awarded, but they're all right around 20%. So that's where the $200,000 comes from. And then the 133, we're asking from this bucket of funds
because the existing fund balance in the sustainability division fund isn't enough to cover that $200,000. So the city would need to match $200,000, and we need to decide where the buckets that will come out of.
Okay, so your grant is dependent upon whether you get that matching money component to submit the grant.
That is correct. And that's not uncommon that, you're kind of doing these efforts in parallel. One is determining the match and one is pursuing the grant. And yeah.
A couple of questions, Marty. Will this project fall through if you don't get this money?
There are several factors to consider there. One is that we're applying for 2 separate but parallel grant opportunities. And that's because there's these overlapping funding of opportunities specifically around EV fast charging that are coming out of the state and federal programs, and they're all coming at once. And so we see this across agents or municipalities and where people are we're applying for all of them and seeing what we get. That said, there would potentially be an opportunity to adjust the scope in terms of like installing 2 chargers instead of 4. But overall, in a nutshell, if you combine the requirements from the grant application and in terms of how many EV fast chargers we would have to install to comply with the grant stipulations, and combine that with our match requirement, we really would have to hit around that $200,000 range. And we don't have the sustainability division budget doesn't have that in our fund balance. So, and if we don't come up with some source of funding, the project would fall through and we would have to pass on the opportunity.
Also, I guess, because as a follow-up, can I assume that we will be receiving income for these 4 charging stations if they do come up and running?
That's correct. So currently, the EV fast chargers produce a modest, about over half of the money actually covers the cost of electricity that we're providing through those. And the remainder is revenue to the sustainability division. So net revenue last year was about $4,000 to $5,000. So, as usage increase, it could be a substantial revenue stream. Also, the stations themselves, not only bringing in and promoting EV road tripping and our location on those corridors, they also have the ability to display advertisements on the stations, and have been in talks with like organizations like BID to see if they would want to put ads on those. So there's sort of like a very, very fancy billboard.
So just to confirm, Marty, I want to make sure I understand. With this project, you'd go from 2 to 6 chargers.
That's correct. Yep.
That is correct. Because we currently have 2 fast chargers at the transit lot. Where would they all be located then?
Yeah, so we would keep the existing ones where they are, and then these would be down in the southeastern corner of the lot. So off of 7th.
So still in the
Correct, in the transit center.
Transit center.
Yep.
lot. Okay, and then to follow up, I think one of you guys asked this question: are those current 2 being heavily used right now?
Yeah, the utilization, we saw a 400% increase in fast charger utilization from 2021 to 2020. And the rates of EV adoption through Colorado are all either on track or surpassing projections. And so this is very much there's this window of pretty incredible grant funding to capitalize on, and it would be looking at making sure we're staying ahead of the curve for the next 5 years, 5, 6, 7 years. Also consulting with LPEA in terms of their projections and what they're seeing, and LPA staff are definitely, saying like, this is where we'd like to be to get ahead of the curve on this.
So do you have any idea like how much those current two are, like how many hours a day they're occupied?
I could get that data for council. Mhm.
If they said, because, yeah, but and what's funny, when I went, is that CML, and I was with someone who was driving around in a Tesla, and well, they were off wanting a Tesla charging station because of course there's a big gap where we are. But you can obviously charge any car at these fast charging stations, correct?
That's correct. And we have a Tesla adapter, and increasingly those are going to be, for a long time, Tesla didn't like to, provide adapters or make that easy for people to use non-Tesla things. It's kind of like that Mac Apple thing, where they have their own design and whatnot. Increasingly, Tesla is kind of providing adapters and ability, and we have those available at the transit center so that Tesla users can use our fast chargers. We did, just as a quick side note, we did look at the opportunity to bring in a Tesla supercharger station. The terms that were kind of proposed by Tesla. So first off, they would require 8 or more, sometimes 10 or more locations, which in terms of electrical load starts to get very extensive, and kind of consulted with LPA on how we would be able to do that from an infrastructure standpoint. Also, the terms of what Tesla sort of was expecting out of, a partnership with the city. They would have required more analysis to see if that was really the best use of the city. And we would have most likely, because they're a private entity, had to go out to an RFP process. We couldn't just choose to work with Tesla. We'd have to say, okay, all companies, we're looking for some type of partnership agreement. And so we couldn't just kind of sole source and choose Tesla for just out of thin air.
Yeah, I know you've been working on that a lot for quite some time.
Yep.
Does a fast charging station charge almost as fast as a Tesla charging station would?
Yeah, so the technical requirements for these grants is 150 kW, which is about double what our fast chargers have been up to this point. It can fully charge vehicles in like 20 minutes. It's pretty impressive. And yeah, these would definitely be getting to the level of that supercharger. Supercharger in terms of output. And there's different ways you can configure that, but yeah, they're very high power.
Thanks. Any other questions from council?
Yes. Marty, and remind me the stat, you may have already told us, but do you know roughly the percentage of people that live in town versus out of towners that utilize those chargers? Do you remember? Do you have that?
I don't have that. I will look to see. I'll get the utilization data. That's one of the takeaways I have from here. The other piece is I will look to see if there's ways to break out specific users.
I was thinking about how you do that, and maybe they would have to enter in their home zip code before they use it, because that could give, anecdotal data, potentially, but it could give us a rough idea of like who's really using the stations and how will this impact tourism potentially.
Yeah, most of those stations are done like by you like set up. You can just pay with a credit card, but a lot of them like people have like an account with the charging station, like a frequent flyer number, so to
Gas
speak.
card.
Yeah, like a gas card. Yeah, exactly. Or a grocery store card kind of thing. So I will look into see if we can like pull to see like who the frequent recurring users would be, residents most likely, and then like those one-time users. Yeah, I'll see if I can find that breakdown.
Great.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Marty. All right, go to transportation.
Yeah.
So the transportation's proposal is just implementation of one of the quick win recommendations in the comprehensive parking plan. So one of the main things that we heard through all of our public outreach was that there's not good signage to direct people to where our parking facilities are. So this request is to do an audit and inventory of our existing signage, and then a plan and recommendation and potentially a rebrand of our wayfinding and parking signage downtown. So, if this doesn't get funded through this funding opportunity, we will likely come to council with a regular budget request, but it will definitely delay the process and just kind of is dependent on what the fund balance conversation looks like.
And I don't know if the new counselors are aware of what we did do you want to just talk a little bit about the parking study
Sure.
and then the quick win?
Yeah.
Just so they're aware.
Yeah, and if I remember, I was on maternity leave, so you guys might have to fill in the holes for me a little bit. We did it, we launched a pretty thorough, comprehensive parking management study last year. We did a citywide survey that had, I believe it was over 1,000 responses. We had multiple public meetings, so we got a lot of really good feedback and engagement from the community. And the recommendations were quick win, short-term, long-term. And some of the quick win solutions were kind of budget-friendly opportunities to make an impact on our parking supply downtown. And one of the things that we did see from the study was that we do have quite a bit of parking vacancy downtown, but it's spread out. It's not right down in the central, right on Main Street. It's just a block off or a half a block off. So one of the recommendations of the plan was to find ways to redirect people from those 80% plus vacancy locations to kind of be dispersed a little bit more throughout the downtown. So this plan or this request would help us direct visitors from out of town who aren't familiar with the parking lots that we have on Second Ave or the Transit Center lot, which we know is often vacant. So hope that answered.
Thank you so much. I appreciate just a little background. Questions from council? You want to start?
No, I just wanted to know if it was
The quick win.
the quick that we talked about.
Okay, any other questions? I do, if you guys are thinking. You said that the $100,000, I think it was 100, right? Would be sent on a plan and marketing rebranding. Would any go towards sign?
Yes, so it would be the actual material purchasing of the signs as well, in addition to inventory audit. And then the rebranding would be material, signs, and installation.
Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you.
Sorry, last one.
Okay.
If this money would go through, what's the timeline for the timeline of the scope of the project?
Essentially, if it did get adopted by council towards this project, we would issue an RFP immediately and just get started on it. We're ready to go.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Rachel, for coming.
Thanks for having me.
You want to introduce your proposal?
Sure. Good afternoon, counselors. So I'd be remiss if I didn't share a message from our board of directors. They would just like to encourage you to consider the intent of the ballot language that the stakeholders and council worked hard to craft and the residents voted for. They were of the understanding that the entire 55% would go towards whatever entity was contracted through the RFP process, which in this case was Visit Durango. So moving on from that note, I'll get into the details of our request. For local events, we requested $123,000. For local event marketing grants. So as I've shared with you previously, we've earmarked $180,000 for this grant program this year, and we are already almost through all of those funds. They are expected to run out in July. So we were hoping to put an additional $85,000 towards the grant. Hopefully that would get us through the end of the year or close to. And then programmatic events, this was $38,000. We'd like to create a winter outdoor rec themed event, name is TBD, and enhance current programs for Durango Arts Week, Spoketober, and Holiday Station, including specific event grants and artistic scholarships. And then moving on, the next major category is trail and infrastructure enhancement projects for 57,500. 12,500 is for a new Adopt Trail program in partnership with partners to be determined, but City Parks and Rec, Durango Trails, etc. Funds would purchase needed equipment like trash receptacles and develop a program for local groups to adopt a trail. $45,000 for bike racks in partnership with Rotary and other TBD stakeholders. We would purchase and install bike racks at trailheads, parks, and hotels. And then we just launched a new grant called the Destination Advancement Grant. And we only have $70,000 for this program currently. We'd like to increase that amount. And the overarching goal of this program is to promote area socially and environmentally sustainable destination to live and visit. Grants will fund environmental sustainability programs, DEI initiatives, business accessibility upgrades, product development projects, and more. So that's a total request of $245,500. And just a quick note, all the things we've identified here are from the destination management or sustainability category of our budget. Nothing is for marketing, sales, operations, or the Welcome Center. And of these funds, about 2/3 of what we're proposing would be a direct pass through back into the community in the form of grants to nonprofits, event organizers, and business grants. I know that's a lot to digest.
Breakdown.
I think so.
She was-
I am,
Can you go through it one more time?
well,
That breakdown, she was taking good notes, but I didn't.
because you said $123,000 for local event grants, but then you said $80,000 to add to the 180. And so I was confused as to what.
Yeah, so we have three big buckets: local events, trail and infrastructure enhancement projects,
The
destination advancement.
Okay,
grant.
great.
So under local
Got it.
events is $85,000
And then
for the
30.
grant program, and then the 38 for the programmatic.
That's- Yeah, okay, got it. And then trail is 57.5. And then,
And then there was
Dustin-
4,500 underneath that.
well, yeah, it was 12.5 for the Adopt a Trail program and
Oh.
45 for the bike racks.
Okay.
And then what was the destination advance grant?
65.
65, thank you.
Good.
Okay. Local events grants.
Mhm.
Okay, wait, oh, sorry.
Yes, please.
Okay, just started talking. and I was like, Sorry, Mary. You had $180,000 for this year. How much requests have you gotten in applications? Do you have that number?
I would have to go back to our records. I believe you asked that at the last presentation I gave. to
Okay, great.
council, And I did send a follow-up email, and I'm just having trouble remembering.
You sent it to me? You sent it to
I
us?
sent it to all the
Okay, great.
council.
No. Okay,
Um,
awesome. Perfect. I can probably Google it while we're
And
talking.
So, the majority of people that make a grant request get some amount of funding unless it's, outside of the county or, it can be in the county as long as it has strong city partnerships because this is city funding. But yeah, we're set to run out of that probably in July.
Okay. Programmatic
It's a mouthful. Programmatic.
event. Couldn't do it. I was like, wow, that was tough for me. You said Spoketober, Durango Arts Week. What else was it?
Holiday Station and the TBD Winter Outdoor Rec. It already passed, but Durango Restaurant Week is another example of a programmatic event.
Okay, and so you would be adding funding to those events, or?
One would be creating the new
A new event.
winter outdoor rec event, and then it would be adding to those existing programs so we could enhance them and then create a kind of mini grant program for people who wanted to create things specifically for those events. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yes. And then the destination grant, this is new.
This is
Okay, and you have some money for it already.
70,000.
And who applies? Like, what can you give me like a little background? I know you said DEI and like you were kind of talking, but
Yeah, so basically anything that falls under the destination management bucket is applicable and can apply for this grant. And so I would imagine it'll be mostly local nonprofits, but companies that are working on green or sustainability initiatives, similar to Marty's green grant, but for, the tourism sector specifically. And then DEI programs, accessibility. So if a business doesn't have accessible parking and they're looking to upgrade, or they need to do something to their door frame to make it ADA compliant. So it's kind of a broad catch-all, but basically anything in the destination management category can apply.
awesome. Just for some feedback for me, I love the local events grants that you guys have been doing. I've heard great things about it. And so, I'm excited that you're keeping to do that. I think the idea of the more bike racks and adopt a trail program and more trash receptacles is great, especially for tourists coming to town. I would like to see potentially how that destination grant works first, as like a first go before we add another, double it almost. It's like, is this going to work? Are people going to apply? What is it going to go to? Kind of, I'm a little hesitant on that. Just for some feedback, not that what I say actually matters, but there you go. And then, okay, I'm going to stop talking and think a little bit while other people talk.
Thank you, Rachel, for coming, presenting. Okay, so with the additional funding, how many more visitor hits do you think that'll bring to Durango? Do you think we're talking 100,000, we're talking 50,000, or do you have any kind of guess?
That would be quite difficult for me to predict. I'd love to have an answer for you, especially because all of this funding that I am proposing today is not going towards marketing. Marketing, we can understand a little bit more directly the ROI on that. And if we place an ad for a certain amount, how many visitors we can expect. This is all going towards destination management, which is more, quality of life, stewardship, responsible tourism. It's not necessarily about attracting more people to the area. So it would be even more difficult for me to estimate that. I'm sorry.
All righty, so for the 80,000 grants, and that's going to run out in July, what was the amount of funding coming out of this portion to add to that to take us to the end of the year?
So it's a little confusing because we originally requested 245.5, but of that amount, it was 85,000.
Okay. Oh, wow. Mhm.
Aside from that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I
Well-
just
well-
provided a slide or something.
Well, I'm really supportive of this kind of upgrade to our current destination travel, destination management, to bring people in and make them aware of what's going on here. And I really do think having the extra events happening downtown and having somebody organize and create them is a benefit to the city.
I'm going to ask you to pause just for a minute because we're receiving information. We don't want to debate and put our opinion on the table. in a study
Okay,
session.
sorry, but Dave asked for my opinion.
I did it when I snuck out to the bathroom. so.
Okay, anyways,
Chastised him too. Just
okay, I don't have any more
receiving
questions. Okay, I'm done.
So I think that was a very good qualifying point. Right now, we're just receiving information. We're not going to provide any direction because we'll do all of that in public. So any more questions for Rachel? Before we make final decision in a open public meeting, it'd be helpful to see in writing this breakdown, if you could just follow up in an email.
Happy to do that.
And
yes.
if you could, in that breakdown, kind of break out, like when you're talking about, like Jessica was saying, programmatic events, exactly, kind of give us some examples. You can.
Sure.
Same with the grants, like when you wanted the 85,000 in grants, if you could provide some examples of what those grants have previously gone to and how they've been used and for what organizations. And then I guess we would extrapolate from there that it would just be more similar type of grant funding. Or you could tell us, but it just information on that would be very helpful as you provide it.
Yeah, I mean, that grant committee has an entire rubric of different categories they grade on sustainability and DEI and local appeal and multi-generational things that council had identified previously. So as much detail as you would like, I'm happy to provide.
Yeah, not too much, but.
Okay.
So any other questions? Yes, go.
So on the programmatic side, you know, the Durango Restaurant Week, Spoketober, Holiday Station, and the TBD Outdoor. Any sort of idea on economic output or input coming in because of those events were held? I know, you know, Councilor Yazzie asked about, you know, how many people, but is there a way to kind of look at how much potential more revenue or more strategic revenue came in because of those events?
Sure. And to add to that, Durango Arts Week will be a new one of those this year. Currently, no, but we are working on it. Nate Peach, Dr. Nate Peach, he's the professor of economics at the Fort, is going to be meeting with us and talking about some more specific ways that we can measure economic impact for specific events like this. And then through Tom's process with JLL for the Destination Management Master Plan, I know they're providing some economic impact figures as well. I don't think it would be as specific as what you're talking about, but we're working on it.
Sure. Well, it'd be good to, you know what those numbers are, you know, what it means to different sectors. But also, you know, what that means from a sales tax and maybe even a lodger's tax standpoint, like how much more are we garnering because of some of those events?
Sure.
Great. Okay. Any other questions? Are we good to go? All right. So when will this hit the agenda? Do we think? What do you need?
If directions to proceed as we've presented, it would hit the agenda
On June 20th?
on June 20th.
Okay.
And it'll be a public hearing, right?
No,
No, it'll be,
a resolution just goes on consent. It's a budget authorization.
but they didn't want additional information before then?
So I thought we weren't making any sort of decision.
Yeah. So do we really?
You don't want to make a decision. You can say that you're supportive of the recommendation. That still gives you another opportunity when on the agenda. If you're not satisfied.
Okay, so for
Well, I guess either
What-
way, let me just throw this idea out. If we were to put it on the consent agenda as staff has recommended, we have the right to pull that agenda item and have a discussion at that time,
You always do.
correct?
And you need to give the public an opportunity to talk about something too. So any member from the public could contact you and ask it to be pulled from the consent agenda. In other words, we don't want to make a decision here.
Right.
if Not having public input, but you can certainly direct the administration which way to go to get it on your agenda. If everyone's in agreement, everyone's happy, you put it on the consent agenda, you ask if there's any public comment in that section of the agenda, and you've met all the requirements. If you still have questions or you think that you might want to make changes, you can either do it at the meeting on the fly, or you can direct the administration to provide you other options.
I guess the only question I would have is, I mean, the other option would be to make it an actual agenda item, in which case there would be a brief presentation like we have had here now for the public.
I mean, that's not going to make Jose happy. but that's
Because-
part of
why-
government.
why-
Let's
why-
get the check of the balance here.
Why are you mad, Jose?
I know. I was like, I don't, I think for me, it doesn't really have, you know, the consent agenda is really for non-controversial items.
Correct.
So kind of coming to study session in these items in my way is saying like, here's what Cal staff is looking at. If we're way off the mark and you're like, no, this isn't anything that we anticipated this to be part of, we'd like it to come back with more options for us to discuss and more guidance. It's kind of what I would look at as a very miniature, very, very miniature budget retreat. Because this is funding available for the council to decide on what they want to do. If we were to go to an agenda item without any direction, then we're going to be left trying to figure out if you say, well, what have you thought about this item or this? And we wouldn't have the ability to have a constructive dialogue. So it's kind of why we come to a study session first to see, are we on the right track or not? If it's
Well-
something that you need more information, then the direction would be, staff, we would like you to take a look at whatever other avenues that you would like and talk about a recommendation that way.
So can we provide some feedback then?
Or not here. We can just,
Okay, so,
Back up half a step, because you can, Jose just said, if it's something that's non-controversial, everyone agrees, it goes on the consent, it gets done. If you feel like you have enough information to voice your opinion and maybe tweak the numbers you've seen here today, you can just handle that in a regular discussion at the council.
all lodgers tax is controversial. So
what'd you say?
all lodgers tax is controversial. Like
Right.
that'll never not be a controversial item. I think all lodgers tax, like our lodgers tax is controversial anytime that it's mentioned. And if it's on a consent agenda, someone's pulling it for sure. And so what I would suggest is like, what I would say is like, let's just put it as a regular item in city council, provide this direction, other potential things I'd like to see. Is that what you?
What happens is, put it on, you say what the administration's recommendation is,
Yeah.
the numbers you see up there. And then the council would say, well, I appreciate the recommendation, but I'd rather see all of it go to whoever.
Yeah,
And then you would debate that and you would take a vote on it.
I like that.
Okay,
I say that.
so I have one question. So I understand this clearly. Okay, say if I wanted to adjust the budget numbers up there. And because I do feel there might be other areas that are more pressing than some of them that are suggested, I can do that at this next meeting that we schedule.
You can do it when it comes up on the regular agenda.
Okay, but I can't do it here.
I would not do it.
Okay. Alrighty, as long as I'm able to do that.
No, you get the opportunity. That's the whole thing I'm trying to
Okay,
put in place
And
here.
I
is that
appreciate
everyone
it.
gets to the right place at the right time to have public input, check all the boxes to act like, because we're spending taxpayer money, right?
Mhm.
So we want to check all those boxes to make sure everyone gets an opportunity to fully vet it and discuss it. And the way that I know how to do that is what I'm explaining to. So yes, that would be
Yes,
your
good.
opportunity.
okay.
So there's council support to put this item on the agenda, I believe, as presented. And then we discuss
And
it.
then we discuss it.
Unless,
Wait,
well,
no.
and correct, if I'm wrong, then you speak
Okay,
up.
let's,
I guess
It presented in a
I want
different
it
way.
to be different, but I can't say how I want it differently. So,
Oh, but-
so I guess,
wait,
yeah. Right.
I'm saying this is a starting point, unless you want
Okay.
to recreate it.
I don't want to recreate it, but I mean,
That's why I'm giving them, this is what we want you to bring back. And then we have
Okay.
discussion in public.
okay, so
The
we're
good
good.
news is, if you do it the way I'm suggesting, then it's done at that meeting. You have your debate, you have the opportunity for public input. You get 3 votes, it gets done the way you want it done, and then it's just business that gets carried out by the administration. Now, there is one follow-up thing that's strange in the charter. We have to read it again at a subsequent meeting and then, but.
so at the next meeting, we can haggle over the
Yeah,
different
I'm
percentages.
just- It's a resolution, so once it's done, it's done.
Okay. So we're gonna haggle at the next meeting
Yeah,
for
to-
potentially.
Yeah, for
Yes.
5 minutes and then 3 minutes and then.
Mhm.
you're done.
Okay.
Right.
Well, 3 minutes per counselor.
5 is the first comments.
Five first comments, 3 to follow up and then you're done.
Counselor Yazzie, I think you've.
Okay, so just so I understand clearly, we're going to go ahead and recommend to the city manager that we bring this topic up on the agenda item at the next council meeting. And at that time, we'll be able to answer and ask more questions of these 3 departments to see how we can tweak the plan. And at that time, after all the public hearing, we can move forward with the vote, and that's good.
Right.
Okay, good. Okay,
Now, we're using public hearing and public comment kind of interchangeably here, but the
okay.
point is we want to have an opportunity for public input before you guys vote on how the money's allocated.
Can I put just a little bit of a direction portion needed? Being that it's a study session, I think that the part of where I would look at it as is, yeah, we've come up with a recommendation. And if it's a recommendation that you'd like to discuss and make changes to, I think that would be fine to place on an agenda item. However, if there are items that we have not discussed on here and you want to fund those or give directions to something completely different, I would ask for that direction now if I can, because me putting this on an agenda item and then we want to talk about, I'm just going to mix it. We're going to talk about bus fencing. And from a staff perspective, we're going to be like, we have no idea what that is. So I think from my side of, if it's, yeah, we see this, these are kind of the areas we want to fund. We'll talk a little bit more specifics if we want to discuss and debate that item. But if it is, there are items that we would like staff to consider as funding that were not discussed here, that were not part of this proposal, that direction is something that I would need so that I could be prepared to maybe even just come back and say, okay, obviously we missed. Let's take a look at some of the input from council of where they see this overage going.
And that was, if not at a point where you feel like you're ready to have that vote debate, you can send them, I think I use the word back to the drawing board, and that's a little flowery language, but if you're so disjointed from what's being recommended here, yeah, you don't put it on your agenda yet. You say, we need more information, we have other ideas, start over and come back with something that we can have a good business meeting about and vote on.
Understood. Council.
For me, I don't feel like it's like that disjointed where you're way off the mark. I mean, it has to go to marketing. I think these are good ideas and good direction. And it's where our staff and Visit Durango thinks it should go. Like that makes sense to me. I don't want to come out and pull something just out. We'll just say hat. Thank you. I need you just next to me all the time. That filter. Pull something out of my hat and say where I think that they're bringing good points up. It's more for me. I want to make sure all of the options fall in the ballot language of sustainable marketing. So I want that information during the presentation. And I want to make sure that the funding, I think the specific funding request for the programs, like exactly how much is going where or requested. So we can maybe fudge a little bit within what we have, but I'm not asking for like a bus fence or something. If that makes sense.
Oh, okay. So then Jessica, at that point, when we get that information, then you would be open to readjusting the recommendations of the budget allocations up there from the staff then? Okay.
And Council Woodruff.
But to like what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Not something brand new.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly. Okay, good.
Yeah, nothing brand new. I mean, as presented, I don't think the money would go outside of any one of these three buckets.
I would agree with that. That's why I was saying you can bring forward back this recommendation and we'll go from there.
So I guess,
it's
is there anything you need specifically from me in terms of this presentation on the 20th?
No, I did want information from Rachel. Thank you.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
I'm hearing that Councilor Buell would like information regarding the language. I think it's important clarification.
Just confirming like all the programs presented fall in that marketing language and that our current city attorney agrees with the two. I know Nelson does, but I would like your opinion as well.
I did review this in an email, I think that Tom sent, and I'm in agreement with Mr. Nelson.
Great. That's kind of, I just also wanted his opinion on
Yeah.
that all of these suggestions fall within the ballot language. That's
Okay.
what I was looking for.
Okay.
Excellent. Thanks. I think we're good to go. We'll talk more on June 20th. Thank you, Tom and Sarah and Marty and Rachel. Thank you, all of you. Okay, now moving on to another fun topic, 2005 sales tax reauthorization timeline with Devin Schmidt.
Prefer to be back in Bloom or Brighton. All right. So Mayor and Council, I wanted to have an opportunity. This was something that we kind of added to our agenda a little bit later than our normal time frame, but still within a few days. But I wanted to have an opportunity to have a discussion in regards to the 2005 sales tax reauthorization timeline. And there's a couple parts in here where this is really a study session. Maybe getting some direction, but obviously being able to have a discussion on how we want to go about the 2005 sales tax. A couple things that I know, I don't want to steal Devin's presentation, but we had talked about keeping the Parks and Recreation operations funding the same, and that $0.25 going to that's currently funding Florida and the library, once that's paid off, to go to the city facilities portion inside of it. So Devin's going to do a presentation on it, and then we'll kind of move forward with some questions and answers on it. But I just want to make sure that it's not something that the staff is saying a decision or direction, not decision, direction has to be given today. I think it's an opportunity for us to have that conversation in a manner where we can discuss without having to come to a decision, but just gain where we're all at in our perspectives.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, Mayor, Council, Devin Schmidt, Acting Chief Financial Officer. And so again, the purpose is really whether there should be pursuit of the reauthorization of the 2005 sales tax in 2023. So this conversation has been one that we have worked with council on last year. And then with the retreat, there was direction. And then again, with the current council at the study session, there was direction to continue with the two portions that Jose had mentioned we should be looking at for this reauthorization. So I know this is tiny font here, but wanted to provide what that current sales tax ballot language states, as that's obviously helpful as we're considering reauthorization. So I'll kind of skip over that first part there, but really it's looking at 0.5% of the sales tax, or 50% to be used to finance preservation, acquisition, and maintenance of natural lands, including but not limited to land to preserve water quality in rivers and streams, wildlife habitat, land for hiking, biking, and the creation of maintenance of parks and trails. And then with all of those programs expenditures being first submitted to a citizens advisory board. And then the other 50% was utilized for capital improvements, including but not limited to a new library, road, sidewalk, associated improvements to enhance driver and pedestrian bicycle safety. And you can see here that this tax is set to end on December 31st, 2026. So this is really what the current ballot language states. So I think that's obviously relative as we're considering that reauthorization. So what we heard from council at the last study session was to have 1/4 cent for facilities for capital for the city civic center, which includes the police department, city hall, River City Hall. That would sunset, that tax would sunset at about, on average right now, we're seeing about $3 million a year, and then increasing about 94,000 every year after that. And then the other 1/4 cent for Parks and Recreation for new capital and maintenance of existing capital. And again, so because they're 50% of a 1/2 cent, same dollar amount there. So with that, just wanted to provide council with a timeline. Should there be an appetite to look at a ballot initiative? So should the city pursue that in November of 2023? Really from starting now, it would be narrowing the scope and the language for the uses of the funds, establishing a city's working group for community input, doing community outreach as far as a survey, et cetera. And then in August, take the analysis around the funding needs as well as what this 05 sales tax generates to the financial advisory board for an August meeting. And then should there be a desire to go in November of 2023, we would need to provide the county of a notice of intent in August. That would be the type of direction there.
So one of the reasons as we look into it, I think that there's always going to be support for Parks and Recreation. So the 2005 1/4 cent for that part, I don't think is anything that's been questioned in regards to going through. I think where we're at is the $0.25 for the city facilities side, which I think has, in conversations that I've had with public members, seems to make sense for the Civic Center. It continues to keep the tax at the same rate, continues to move forward in the 2005 sales tax and does the reauthorization. The pluses and minuses with it, the only negative that I see, and talked a little bit with it with Devin. So if you look at $3 million of annual revenue, it's about 75,000 per million if you were to bond it out. So if we were to do that, to do a Civic Center complex is capped out at 40 million. And while our first estimate was about 35 million to 40 million, what I would look at in November 2023, while I think it would be a good opportunity to capitalize on the momentum that we have, without really knowing a better cost estimate with the Civic Center, I would hate to go with the $0.25 and for whatever reason, and I don't have anything that says it will be more than that. However, I do have the asterisk that the Tracy Reynolds, when he provided that estimate, was a very preliminary estimate. It was as he was going through. So if it were to happen to be more than 40 million, then we would risk having to go back out possibly to get maybe 5 or 10 more million of where it is, where we may want to look at as an advantageous of continuing to go through that design process with the Civic Center, get what the amount really is, a better estimate, knowing now that we know that this is probably the route we're going. We are going down this route, still haven't gotten the final contract purchase approval done, and maybe look at that November 2024 as an option that may make it a little bit better for us to provide more information as to what that Civic Center cost was going to be. So wanted to put that out to the council, wanted to be able to discuss it specifically just because we do get questions about, have you ever considered this? And when we look at the November 2023, again, I think there'd be support for it. I think that Parks and Recreation would be a great part. My only hesitancy is if it were to come in more than 40 million to do the whole entire Civic Center complex, I would definitely hate to go back out after saying this $0.25 was going to be for that in a November election.
What about April 2025?
That would be one that we could do. April 2025 is an option.
I know it's pushing late, but it's more, isn't it? All of the taxes that we've passed recently, the streets, and have been in April elections when it's mostly local people voting for local issues. I don't know. I was just throwing it out there. I know it's kind of pushing it late to 2026, but it's I don't know if you guys looked at it.
We have it. It's in there. Well, it's in there in our minds. We just use November on this part. I think that it's a good one to have in there. I think what I look at November 2024 is it gives us an opportunity that if it were to happen to fail, we have an opportunity to regroup and then possibly go back out in April of 2025. So we have more shots at making sure that the success of it not kind of pinned down close to the end. I do think by November 2024 in a year, we'll have a lot more of a knowledge on what it might look like, what it's going to cost. We're going to definitely look at myself getting a group of a citizen working group to help us just with the community in regards to what does it look like, how does it work, and then also still having those public engagement meetings. I think just a little bit more time may help. And I was one that I looked at November 2023 and my mind was like, well, it's be a great time to capitalize on a lot of the momentum that we're getting. However, I do want to make sure that we have the appropriate information as well.
Feels a little rushed to be November 2023 from my perspective as a citizen. And yeah, I mean, yes, momentum is great, but I wouldn't want it to feel rushed to the public. I want them to feel confident that we have our numbers right, that we're doing the right thing, that we've done a lot of our due diligence on outreach, a working group with people that, love and care for this community. I think that's, yeah.
So Jessica, you're talking about April of 2024. Oh.
Correct.
So I have a question.
Sure.
If you get plans and you decide that it won't fit within the $0.25 allotment, if it was so directed in that way, then would you think at that time about increasing it?
I think that would be a discussion point
Okay.
for us with the council in regards to kind of that one step in that discussion. If that were to be it, that I'd like to have of how do we want to go about it?
Okay.
Because I think there's different opportunities that could avail ourselves to it. I would, just hate to do this and then it be
Yep.
successful. And then we're just kind of caught within this because we said this is what it was going to do. And then it finds out that there may not be enough funding to it. And with all that being said, my goal is to get it to that 35 million
Right.
part where we're at, but you never know. I mean, maybe the community through the engagement process has some enhancements they'd like to do to that property that might actually end up making it more.
Oh, very
And so there's a point to make sure that we leave that ability to do if there's something the community really would like to see feature there. Or, if we look at a PD, how does that work into it and how does that make itself work?
Great. And then I heard that, obviously that building would likely qualify for potentially historic grants and things like that. That would come after, I would imagine, after the whole planning and
Yeah, it would be
If-
part of the process for sure of kind of what do we look at? What are some of the grants that might be out there to be able to receive? And then also just making sure that, we preserve the historic preservation of that building and the look and feel.
great. Other questions? Counselors, Council Yazzie?
It's been good discussion and I enjoy hearing everybody's opinion. But I do feel like November 2023 is rushing it a little bit because we do want community engagement on this. And I think if we don't rush it, we can get a more precise indication of what it would cost, because I'd hate to put it out there and then we think it's going to cost, 40 million and it end up costing 55,
Okay, so I'm hearing that you're saying to us that you were thinking more November 2024.
That is the target. And what I would look at is the direction. So as we continue to go through, it obviously doesn't mean that it's set in stone and a decision made, but that is something that we're looking at with the 2005 sales tax, parks at the $0.25, city facilities at the $0.25, targeting a November 2024 election, assuming that prices come in where they're at. If anything changes, we'll definitely have that conversation before that, but it helps from a standpoint from our side, as we do know that there's a couple initiatives that are out there as well, that we have possibly a library district. We have some other constituents that maybe are looking at doing some a housing or affordable and workforce tax. So wanting to make sure that we can at least book in something right here. So we know as we're looking at these timelines and as we look at what other communities are doing, entities, that we can at least say we have something penciled in here. And it helps us begin penciling in other decisions. Again, nothing is final until it's approved and told by council, but it just helps us with planning purposes for staff to be able to prepare and give you better projections and analysis as we get closer.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure.
Complete sense. Sorry, I was off. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. I think you have council support for that.
Thank you.
I think with that, and we can adjourn the meeting a little early,
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
So when we look
early.
at that
Nice
estimate,
job.
it said out the German 425 and it's 420. So we're
Very
pretty
good.
close on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.